Hello and welcome to MBTV. My name is Damon and I'm an MBTI Master Practitioner. Today's topic is the difference between the common personality mistyping of ISFP and INFP. These two types can appear very, very similar, primarily because they share the same dominant function or approach to life of introverted feeling, which means their approach to life in general is done through harmonizing with their own values and living in a way that's according to those particular values. The better way to approach this mistype is through their auxiliary and tertiary function. The INFP prefers extroverted intuition, whereas the ISFP prefers extroverted sensing. Further breaking this down into its components, it is the difference between the NISE axis and the NESI axis, and it really draws out the true identity of this type and brings it to the surface. In my previous video, Introverted Feeling, I mentioned that both ISFP and INFP express in the outer world seeking to match their inner world. They want to have that correlation, and they're less concerned with how that may appear to others. What I'd like to add is that their preferred method of expression is concerned with the way that they see the outer world. We know that the ISFP prefers sensing instead of intuition. So what this means is that the ISFP is less about conceptual meaning and more about the actual physical expression, generally creating some type of visual, auditory, or kinesthetic expression. We're going to get a little more of this later. But what this can mean is that things in the area of the arts for the ISFP, both performing and visual, are very common for this type. They want to find their home in these areas. It doesn't mean they always do, but this is the general tendency. However, this does not imply that they're naturally skillful at these things, but they have a strong inclination to express themselves in this manner, and generally they will practice it enough to have some kind of competitive level of skill. This contrasts the INFP, who tends to be more naturally inclined to express themselves in a very metaphorical, abstract, and often intangible way. This is often demonstrated by their interest in the liberal arts such as psychology, writing, social sciences, and other things that require heavy interpretation and conceptual analysis. It may contain metaphorical language as well. Although both types are heavily slanted toward pursuing music, you may find that the INFP expresses themselves in a much more abstract way. It's just simply because they prefer this introverted intuitive function. And so they often lean toward creating or writing music in a more poetic manner. Now, this is a common generalization, but there are always exceptions, as both types are capable of using intuition and often abstractions related to the intuition. It's simply that the ISFP trust it less than their own concrete observations. In other words, concrete expression is much more enjoyable and preferred in the ISFP than it is in the INFP, who feels they may not actually get the full meaning out. The abstract expression preferred in the INFP is what they feel is more general as far as their internal state. And one of the easiest ways to discern this type difference is to understand what information they actually trust: metaphorical, abstract, concrete, or expressive. The natural trust of their intuitive partner leads INFPs to prefer the discussion of ideas, exploration of mental novelty, and the pursuit of possibility. A lot of this, of course, happens in their own mind, often not sharing it with anyone, but exploration with it through books or novels. But most of the time, they will probably be open to sharing this side of themselves to people they actually trust or trust meaningfully. Functionally speaking, the ISFP appears to be the quieter of the two, not really trusting the value of words, as words are representations of real actions. And these actions, they prefer to simply do things and demonstrate their internal state by harmonizing with that internal world through action. Life is meant to be enjoyed to the ISFP, not necessarily extrapolated into further possibilities of what could be. They may think excessive mental analysis takes the joy out of life. And by default, the INFP feels kind of the opposite. And a sense of joy comes from playing with words, abstractions, or simply exploring each other's mental worlds and really figuring out what could be, what possibilities. Let's create something. So their sense of a good time may appear to be quite different than the ISFP, who may feel that it's more ideal to create experiences through action with each other. So in a sense, the love language of the ISFP could be quality time spent. Okay, so we're not going to get in that topic though. Despite these abstract versus concrete differences, both ISFPs and INFPs are commonly considered artistic. Unlike IJs, who outwardly express their judging FE or TE function, IPs extrovert their perceiving functions, and it's either extroverted sensing or extroverted intuition. And this can lead to IPs appearing more creative or artistic in general. In the INFP, extroverted intuition governs their attitude toward the outer world. For this reason, they may appear to be brainstorming or thinking aloud. They may not always seem to have a point as they discuss things out loud, as they prefer this emerging connection to methodical connections often associated with introverted intuition. Underneath the complexity of their thinking, however, you will generally find some very concrete referential idealism. And this is usually due to introverted sensing. Their internal reality seems to be crystal clear to them, almost more real than the external reality at times. And this is because of their subjective sensory preference through introverted sensing. The ISFP may feel that their internal world is a bit more abstract and hard to really make sense of it all, and tends to want to keep it that way. They really do kind of want to just make it abstract in their own internal world. They trust the real and tangible world to guide their own inner sense of prediction. So basically you have the ISFP who is doing this theoretical extrapolation internally, and the INFP who is doing this extrapolation externally and aloud, often using it to bounce off other people to further explore those possibilities. The ISFP does this internally, hence why they're more quiet. This is not a shyness thing, this is just they prefer to contemplate internally. This creates a different dynamic in the INFP, as they love their open-mindedness, but they struggle with making clear, direction-oriented decisions that have the potential to cause disruption to their preferred method of living, which could be on a whim or pursuing possibilities or being a little more free, and leaving them to always wonder what could be. The problem with this is the ISFP has an entirely different struggle with their extroverted sensing. They often feel the pull of that extroverted sensing in ways that follow what is seen as aesthetically pleasing because it might be environmentally pleasing to people at a time. So they tend to be a little more attuned to popular fashion trends. And this is a clash because their introverted feeling may feel a natural resistance to what is being true to themselves and not follow the typical trends of others, and creating a more convergent identity. Of course, it depends on what their value system is ultimately. The ISFP may feel the push-pull effect of always trying to fit in, but at the same time to being uniquely different to provide their own individual contribution to the world around them. Generalizations aside, both types may feel a sense of both struggles. So it's not just one and other or black and white. It's just that one is more prominent over the other. In all fairness, these types can be very hard to distinguish, and it really boils down to what one trusts over the other. This is not to imply that ISFPs are any less abstract than INFPs, or that INFPs are any more removed from the real world. They just tend to trust one kind of information over another, and that kind of governs their psyche. And again, it really boils down to preference and range of scope of the functions. Ultimately, I hope this video provided you with one small piece of information that helps you differentiate the difference between these two unique and very similar types. If you liked this content, don't forget to click that subscribe button below and become a part of the MBTV community by joining our chat and our forum in the description. The links are down below. That being said, thank you, and we'll see you next time. Appreciate it. A personal quest to seek external confirmation or elimination, and often just avoid asking the person altogether. They undoubtedly analyze and drill down every piece of external evidence they can find to either support or eliminate their insight. They may feel incredibly uncomfortable talking to their friend in this particular situation because of unexpected human variables. They may be completely unaware of cultural and personal values, and if they happen to be aware of these values, they tend to be paralyzed at evaluating those values.